Hey everyone, in this video I'm going to be showing you how to create a custom game mode in Trilogy. We're going to be doing Team Deathmatch. So the first thing you're going to want to do is load up your Trilogy mod kit. So just open your uproject file and that will bring you here. So the next thing we're going to want to do is create a new mod, and so we'll just call this Gamemode TDM video. Hit create mod and we get our blank content folder. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a bunch of files in here essentially that we're going to be essentially overriding to create this game mode. So we're going to start with actually just the template map. So we'll just drag that into the video folder and just do copy here, and we're gonna just create and copy over all the files first. So the next step we're gonna do are the core gameplay files, and so we want to go into gameplay and actually into base, and so we're gonna want to create children blueprints of these four right here. So we'll start with game mode base, and we'll just right click it and make a child blueprint class, and then we'll do game state, make a child blueprint of that, and the controller based child blueprint, and the state based child blueprint. Then we'll take these four that we just created and we will move those over to our Gamemode TDM video folder. So the next thing we're going to want to do is copy over. We're going to be overriding the HUD and customizing the HUD for this game mode. So we're going to want to go into UI and into HUD, and we're going to want to copy this file over, this WBP HUD. We're going to also want to copy over this flag score file. And we're going to be modifying the VR wrist HUD as well. So we're going to copy this VR info leftover as well, this other widget blueprint. And finally, we're going to copy over, we're actually going to go into characters, and we're going to copy over this VR character because we're going to point its wrist HUD to the new one that we're going to create. So we're going to need an override of this as well in our video folder here. So copy that over. All right. So there we go. Everything's copied over. We'll go ahead and do a save all. That'll get everything saved. And we're going to rename a few of these files. So we'll call this, this is our map. So we're going to call this Gamemode TDM video. And let's see, we'll start over here. So we're going to remove this base child here. We're just going to call this TDM for Team Deathmatch. And we'll do the same for this core gameplay file, the game state. Just replace that with TDM. Same thing for the player controller. You don't have to, you can name these whatever you want, obviously. It's just good to keep it organized so it's easy to read. And so get rid of that. And then we're not going to have flags in Team Deathmatch, so we'll just call this, instead of flag score, we'll just call it TDM score. And for the HUD, we'll add an underscore TDM there as well, Team Deathmatch. And finally, put an underscore TDM at the end of this. And this, I think we can just keep this the same. You know what? I need to redo this one, so let's delete that. because we actually needed to create a child class of it, not just copy it over. So let's go back to characters, base, sorry, just characters, and this VR character, we'll just right click and create a child blueprint, and we'll actually just move that over. So, whoops, we actually just want to move that. But it just copied it, so we can just delete it from here. And there it is. So we'll go ahead and rename that to VR, just TDM, like that. So there we go. Everything's in there and renamed. So now we're actually going to start modifying these files for the Team Deathmatch game mode. So we'll start by just opening our map. And so we can tell that it's open here, Gamemode TDM video. The first thing we'll do is Team Deathmatch doesn't have any flags. So we have these flag spawners in the level. So we can actually just delete those. And we don't need the no flag zone for this. So we'll actually delete that as well because we don't have any flags in the level. And then what we want to do is, these are all, since we copied this from the template map, if you go, you may not have this tab, but it should be under Window World Settings if you don't have it, and that'll appear here. And this is where, for this entire level, that we kind of link it to all of our core gameplay classes. So what we want to do is we want to point this level right here, which is what we have open, to our gameplay classes that we created here, that we copied in. And these are, of course, children of the base classes. So we'll start with the game mode. And I actually have another one, so you'll just have one probably. Actually have to be careful. And it's not giving me the path, so I don't know which one's which. Let's just try the first one. And let's hit this magnifying glass. Okay, good. So the first one is pointing. I just wanted to make sure because I had done a test before. So if I click this, I have all these same named files here. So yeah, that's a little bit of an issue, but you won't probably have that issue. But I just checked it with this magnifying, and it's pointing into the same mod content folder. So that's good, because we want this level here to point into these overridden game mode classes that we created. So yeah, so default pawn should be none, because we're going to be spawning that in ourselves in the game mode. In fact, you won't have to do that. My game mode base class will do that for you. Player controller class, let's just go to this first one, confirm. Yep, it's pointing to that. And then the game state, we want it to point to this one here. Make sure, yep, it's pointing to that. And finally, our player state, we want that to be pointing to our new class, which is this one here. Perfect. And we can leave spectator pawn alone. So let's save all. And that's pretty much all you need to do for the map setup. And of course, we're going to leave, these are just our team spawn points, so we're just going to leave those as is. All right, so the next thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to start modifying the actual game mode file. So we'll double click that to open it. Hit compile, go to our event graph. So the first thing we'll do here is we want to tell it to use teams. So we'll click that. And you can also have a few variables here that I've exposed to the mod kit. So you can adjust the number of points to win. You can adjust the delay between changing levels after a team does win. And you can adjust the respawn time. So, or you just leave them at 5 seconds. That's a pretty good value. And you can leave this at 5 for now. I'm just going to leave them. But the key is make sure this use teams is selected. So it actually, when players come in, it assigns them to, it basically auto balances and assigns them to the team with the least amount of players. So, and that's just done for you just by clicking that. So now we're going to do kind of like all the game mode logic. So we'll just clear out the begin play and event tick. Just save it. And so what we're going to do is we're going to override this really special event. It's called it's just called handle starting new player. So this is like a built-in event in Unreal Engine, and it's what I'm using in my main game mode class in the game. And basically what this does is just anytime a new player gets into the game, either like the first time they join or after the game seamless travels to a new level, like after the game wins, every time like a player gets into the map, it's going to run this. And game mode, it only ever runs on the server. It never runs on the client. So it's a really good way to do like protected things. Like for example, what we're going to do, which is like increment the score. So yeah, so you'll want to essentially override this event. And so what we're going to do though is we don't want to completely override it. We want to do a call as well to the parent function. So we're going to right click it and then do this add call to parent function. And that's really important. So we're going to connect this execution path, and we're also going to connect this to that. And so what this is going to allow is this is going to say, okay, go run all the code in my main game too. And that's like really important because there's a lot of code being run there, and this, by adding this, you get to run all of that code, so you don't have to spend all the time like spawning in the correct players and assigning them to teams and all of that. So that by putting this in, all of that's going to be handled for you. It's going to run the stuff out of the main game. And yeah, and so the main reason we're using this event is because we actually want to access. You'll see why in a second here, like why we want to access the player coming in on the server. The main reason is we want to detect when this player dies, right? Because that's how team deathmatch works. Like the points are based on kills, basically. So you'll see it all makes sense in a second how by getting this player now, we can actually detect when it dies. So what we're going to do is this is giving us this player controller object reference. We're just going to drag off of it, and we're actually going to cast to our player controller base. The reason is, and I'll put a little reroute note here just for clarity, we need to cast to this because this particular class, this is a custom class that I've created in the main game, BP player controller base. It has a special event that I created called player died. So like that doesn't just come in Unreal. Like, you have to create that yourself. So yes, I've exposed that particular event to the mod kit. So that's why we have to cast to player controller base. So we have to take this player controller that's coming into the game and cast it so that we can do something special, which is drag off of this, and we can then bind to player died, this one. And so now what's going to happen is every time this player that came in, it only has to come in once, but every time it dies, it's going to literally run. We're going to drag off this event, and we're going to type custom event. We're going to add a custom event, and we're going to call that like player died. So what's going to happen is every time that this player dies, it's going to literally call anything to the right of this. And so what do we want to do? So like the first thing we want to do is, so when the player dies, this event's actually turning a couple useful pieces of information. It's returning the actual actor, the player actor that died, and it's also returning the person that killed that player. And you'll see like those are actually very important pieces of information to have when a player dies. So the first way we're going to use it is we're going to say, okay, well, at the end of this, the whole point of this is that we want to, when this player dies, we want to give a score to the team of the player that killed them. However, the player can kill themselves, and so in that case, we don't want to assign a point to the other team. We only want to assign a point if they kill one of their own players on their own team or if they kill an enemy player. So to do that, it's fairly simple. We just drag off this player, and we just want to make sure that the player that's dying is not equal to itself, basically, that they're not equal. The instigator and the player are not equal, because if they are equal, that just means that it killed itself. So then what we can do is just say they're not equal, and we can drag off of this. And we can, this basically ensures that we're not going to, it's basically not going to run anything once we connect this to true, it's not going to run anything past this branch if these are equal, essentially. So if they're not equal, then it will be true, which means it didn't just kill itself. So I'll add a little comment here, and I'll just say, did we not kill ourselves? With a question mark. So if we didn't kill ourselves, that means someone else killed us, either on the other team or on our own team. And in that case, we want to register a score. So in order to do that, we're going to grab the instigator, because at this point we need to figure out what team the killing player, the killer, is on. So to do that, that information is stored on what's called the player state. So we're going to go ahead and drag off the instigator. We're going to cast to a pawn, because this instigator is just an actor. Technically, an instigator should always be a pawn, but for some reason in my game, I had just casted it. I had it as an actor. So in this case, we're going to have to actually cast it to a pawn. And the reason is because pawn actually has an access or a variable to the player state, which is where we need to get the team from. So we wouldn't be able to just drag off of this. If we type player state, there's no way to get the player state. We can only cast, but it's not really what we're not trying to cast it. We're actually trying to get it. So you'll see here, now that we've cast it to a pawn, we can go in now and then we can say get player state. See, so it has this built-in variable for the player state. So that's why we had to cast it to a pawn. And now from the player state, we need to actually, player state doesn't have the team directly on it, because it's player state, by default is just an empty, kind of like an empty class. It's just open for you to start putting variables in. However, in my game, I've exposed, if we can cast it to our player state base, and then we can connect this execution path. The player state base, I've actually programmed in the team, and I've exposed that to the mod kit, so you can drag off of that, and now you can just type get team, and there you go. So you can actually get the team off the player state base. So remember, this is all connected to the instigator. So we're basically just going in the instigator and basically getting the team that it's on. So we'll add a little comment here, and we'll say get instigators team. And then so now that we have the team of the player that killed this player, I've also exposed a really useful function to this game mode, and that's going to be increment team score right here. So you can just connect this and then just plug this into the team, the score of the team you want to increment by 1. And we can just put a little note here and just say, increase the instigator's team score by 1 point, or something like that. Just compile that. And amazingly, that's all there really is to calculating scores in Team Deathmatch. So let's see what's next. Yeah, so we're actually done with this. So the next thing we're going to want to do is go into player controller TDM. And in here, what we're going to do is, since this is where you define the HUD class that you want to use. So we don't want to use the regular HUD. We actually want to use a modified HUD, so we have to point it to that. So let's point it to this first one, and then make sure that, yep, it's in this game mode video, so it's pointing to the new HUD that we created. So let's take a look at that just to see what the HUD looks like. So this is what I brought in from the main game. So you can see kind of generally how the HUD is set up. You know, we have our health and energy at the top left, and you can kind of see them here as well. So, you know, we have our flag score widget, the hit cross, the big X when you get hit, the crosshairs, and then right in the middle of the screen. And we have this vertical box here, which just has different widgets for the different weapon ammos, and we have our speedometer widget, and we have like our zoom. And so this is literally how simple the trilogy HUD is, and it's, as you can see, it's very clean and organized. And what we're going to be ultimately doing is we just want to replace this, right, for team deathmatch, because see, these right here are flag identifiers, so we don't need that in team deathmatch. So that's why we're going to be modifying this HUD, and that's why we created this HUD TDM. And of course, that's why in player controller, we actually have to specify that we want to use this HUD TDM inside of our mod kit, and not the one from the actual main game. Yes, so we can close that for now, and then just make sure when you open up player controller that you just choose the correct HUD class to this new one that's in your mod kit. So the next thing we're going to want to do is actually go back into this HUD TDM. And down here, we want to replace this with this TDM score widget here, because we're going to be modifying this in just a second as well to get rid of these flag states. So let's just do that now. So to get this, we're going to look at this position. So we can see it's anchored here at the bottom left, and it's using a position of 50, negative 50, a size of 250 in X, and a size of 30 in Y. So we're just going to try to remember those. And we can actually just keep this in here. And so what we'll do is under user created, these are user created widgets. And it's better to do this to have these widgets kind of like these as like separate widgets like we have here. It just keeps things a lot cleaner, and then they're reusable. So so what we're going to do is under user created, we're going to find our TDM score. So hopefully this is the correct one. Let's see, I'm wondering, hopefully there's a way to figure that out. I don't even think there is. Let's see, so if we open this, yeah. So I think we got the right one because they're both opening to the same part. Cool. All right, so what I'll do is, this is going to be the one that we're going to modify. So let's first give it the bottom left anchor. And let's copy those positions from this one here. So 50, negative 50, 250, 30. So it's going to be 50, negative 50, 250, and 30. and the alignment should be 0 and 1. So we'll just make this 1 in the Y. There we go. So now they're just like right on top of each other. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to delete the original flag score because we don't need that anymore. And all we have is our TDM score widget that's inside of our mod kit here. So we'll save all. And so that's it. So our HUD now is pointing to that's what's our custom team deathmatch score widget that we're about to modify next. So let's go ahead and open that. So TDM score. So here we go. So what do we need to do? So like, we can probably just delete this. We don't need that. It's being used. So let's actually go clean up where it's being used. So we'll go into the graph. And go into set font size. So this is actually where that reference is. So let's see. This is the team border, it looks like. I think it's really this orange orbs state text. So orbs are actually flags. They were going to be orbs originally, just to let you know what orb means. So you can basically just think of that as the flag. Yeah, and so basically it's kind of complex. I could just delete it. In fact, we can just do it. So I'll just hit delete. Do you really want to delete? And just say yes. And then go to this one and just say yes. And then when we go back to the graph, if we were to compile it, it'll start throwing some errors. And so let's see. So it's just missing. These two are missing targets now because we deleted those. So what we'll do is we'll delete this in this line, and we'll also just delete this guy, and we'll delete those pins. We'll bring this down, kind of reorganize it a bit. Okay, give me 1 sec. Okay, so to create like this new font, we just have to grab like I'm just using this orange text. Just hit get since that's still existing. So this is the orange team score, and this is the yellow team score text. So I'm just grabbing this, and I'm just going to set it to the target here. And I'm also going to connect it to, it's already has it here, but I'm just going to connect it, replace it, and get rid of that. And now it should compile. Yep. And so what this is doing, it's a little bit complicated, but it's like a special function where it allows us to set a custom font size to this particular widget. And the reason that's important is because in VR on your wrist HUDs, the default font size for these fonts, it's too small. It's too hard to read. So I exposed this font size that's been exposed on instance so that we can actually customize this. And this is just part of the functionality needed to actually set this and customize the font size and on the orange team score text and the yellow team score text. So the other thing we need to do to complete that process is this is just a set size function that we've just modified. We also need to go to the event graph, and we need to create an event construct. So this just means when this thing essentially appears in the game, it's going to run anything to the right of this. So we're going to add a call to the parent function because we still want WBP base. It's like a base. It's a base class that has a bunch of references, and we still want its event construct to run as well. So we want this to run and its base class to run. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to call set font size. So set font size is if we double click it, that's exactly what we just modified. So yeah, so what it's going to do is when this widget loads here, it's going to get the font size variable that we set externally. And it's actually, well, when this widget loads and it's going to set font size, it's going to grab that variable and it's going to set the font size to whatever we've overridden that to. So you'll see that later. We're actually going to modify this later. So let's see. Yep, so I think this is fully set up now. So pretty simple. So yeah, the next thing we're going to want to do is we're going to do a save all. We're going to want to do, this is the wrist HUD widget, basically. So this is what for VR. And so what we're going to do is we're actually going to, same thing, we don't need the flag score widget inside of our wrist HUD widget. So we're going to delete that. I'm actually checking it. So it's just fill 1.0, right? Those are the basic settings. So we're just going to delete this one. Oops. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put in, we're going to go back to our user created ones. And we're actually going to reuse this TDM score right here. And we're going to do the same thing. So fill and then 1. And there you go. So now in our TDM, our VR left wrist HUD team deathmatch widget, it's just going to have our actual TDM score instead of the flag score widget. Now this is where when we click this, these are going to be like too small, too hard to read in VR. So this is where that font size override variable comes in. So instead of 18, we're going to set it to 32. And we're not going to see that here because we're not using pre-construct. If you use pre-construct, you'd see it in the editor. But in our case, we're just using construct, which is fine. So we won't see it immediately here, but in game, this will be set at a larger font size, which was originally 18, and now it's going to be 32. So it'll be nice and easy to see. Yep. And so the last thing we're going to do here is in our VR character, going to open full blueprint editor. We want to make sure that our VR character is using that new left wrist HUD widget that we just created. So click that first one, make sure, yep, it's in here. So yeah, it's pointing to this now. And from a programmatic standpoint, we're actually done. We've actually created, I think, everything we need to get a full brand new team deathmatch game mode working. So not too bad. And what we'll try to do now is we'll try to actually build it and test it to make sure it's actually working. So let's go through that process. So let's go ahead and let's package this mod. So it's going to be this, we're going to go to package UGC and then game mode TDM video, and we'll just choose our desktop. Okay, so that finished. So the next thing we're going to do, and here it is, this new folder, game mode TDM video, and here's the pack file. So we're going to actually, to do a full test, the best way to test like this kind of mod really is, you know, to actually do a live test, like with actual players in the level, since we're going to be killing them and getting points based on our kills. So we want to make sure all of that's working. So to do that, we're going to go through the full live process. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to, for next, upload this to the Steam Workshop. So I'm actually going to be using one of my compiled builds here. Let's see. I'm actually going to grab this path so it's easier, so I can just copy paste it in. Okay. And we're going to load up Trilogy. And we're going to go to Upload Mod. In this case, I'm not going to create a new mod. I'm going to update an existing mod I have. I have a little testing environment. And so I usually, just from this one area, from this one mod ID, I will, I'll just replace what's already there. So I'm actually going to select that mod from the dropdown. What I'll do is actually I'll turn off anti-aliasing, so it's a little bit easier to see this settings menu. Maybe bloom as well. There we go. Yeah, so go back to Upload Mod. Yeah, so I'm in Update Mod. I've clicked this tab at the top, and I've selected Kevin's modding test zone, and it also gives you the Steam Workshop ID number here. Now I'm going to start giving myself, re-putting in the title, a description, and here's the path on my desktop to where the pack file is. Also the avatar, essentially the image for that workshop item. And I'll just give it a change note, just something like updated mod. I have to select, since this is a testing zone, I usually just put it under all 4 tags. And then of course I'll just hit update, and there you go. So it's uploading the mod to the workshop, and it completed. So that's good. So now we can do a live test. So we'll go ahead and exit at this point. So if I go to the workshop here, I already have it open. So here's my testing environment right here. So I'm going to click that. And yeah, we can see here that it already found the update. So it updated on November 3rd at 11:34. So that was literally just 1 minute ago. So it already has our update in Steam. And of course here you can see our the ID number as well. And so that'll be important. You'll see in a second here. So what we're going to want to do now is we're going to want to set up a dedicated server to host that mod. So I already have a dedicated server here built on my desktop. And we'll kind of look at some of the settings. So the first thing I want to do though is I'm going to grab this pack file just off of my desktop, since I already have it. And I'm going to throw it into my mods folder here. And so the important thing is under workshop items, we have to let the dedicated server know like what mods it's hosting. So if we open up workshop items, we'll see it's this number here. It's the same as this folder, and it's actually the same as this number here. So that's how we tell the dedicated server, how it communicates to the clients what mod ID to download off of the workshop. So yeah, so I basically just grabbed this mod ID from my testing zone and from the mod I just updated there, which is this mod we just created together. You just put it into this text file. You can actually host multiple mods, and you can just separate them on new lines here. And you can even comment them out if you don't want to use a mod with 2 forward slashes. But anyway, so this is the mod number we're using on our workshop items, and then in here we have this is the same ID of the folder, and we can just paste in the mod that we just created, the pack file there. So this gives the dedicated server access to this mod so that it can load it in as well. So the next thing we're going to want to do, now that we have our mod defined and copied into our dedicated server, let's look at some of the under saved config Windows server. Let's take a look. So our dedicated server INI, I've just given it a server name as like server test. 10 up to 10 players because we had 5 spawn points on each side, and then importantly, okay, yeah, we got to change this name, so it's just Gamemode TDM. So we actually have to make sure it's the same exact name as the map in the mod kit. I'm sorry, in the mod that we provided. So it's actually going to be, I just copied that and I'm pasting it. So yeah, and we'll do this. We'll just say trilogy, you know, like Gamemode mod test or something. Just makes it easier to identify. And we got the map name correct, right? So that's it. This we're not going to bother with. We'll just leave these at the default like ports. And yeah, our dedicated server is now ready to host these mods. So I actually have a shortcut here, a bat file that just actually loads this file or this exe, but with this dash log at the end of it. So I think you could also just create a shortcut to it and add that in the target, but this is how I do it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to launch this dedicated server this way. So there you go. And it's got our anti-cheat software running as well, so you can't load cheat programs. And I think we can get rid of that window. And then at this point, I usually like to go into Steam and go to View Servers. And there we go. We can already see it if we just hit refresh all. Trilogy Gamemode mod test. So Steam, this server is running and Steam is detecting it, so it'll work in game. And it's hosting the mod because we set it up to do that. And yeah, so now we're ready to load Trilogy on 2 different computers. So I have a second computer here to my left, like a laptop. And it's actually, I created, and Steam actually does recommend this. Like you're allowed to create kind of, you know, like test accounts. And so I have created like, because you can't really run, so yeah, that's actually an issue. Like you might actually have to own like Trilogy on like 2 different accounts to test it. So I might have to find a better way to do this. But for now, for this video, we'll just test it in this way. So I have a second computer. It's on like a different Steam account that has access to Trilogy. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to load the Trilogy client on one computer here. And then on my other computer, I'm going to load it as well. So on this first computer, I'm going to hit find, and we can see Trilogy Gamemode mod test, and wait for it to finish. And I'll be fixing this later. I know it's hard to see, but yeah, there's this join button, so I can just hit join, and then it should download. That didn't work. So let's see. That's probably just not going to work. And it is loading the video. computer. And it also doesn't. It's very odd. So I wonder if there's a misconfiguration on my server somehow. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to restart Steam. Because what it is like I think Steam, it can take 5 or 10 minutes for Steam to actually grab the update. Even though we saw the update here, our actual computer and the Steam client like hasn't downloaded it yet. So let's go ahead and but you can actually force it to update just by simply restarting Steam. So I'll do that on both computers now. So hopefully this works. Pretty much should, because everything seems to be configured correctly. See, if you go to downloads now, you can actually see it just downloaded. If you hover over this eye, see it just downloaded some workshop content at like right now at 11:43. It just ticked up. So yeah, that was probably the problem. So I'm actually kind of glad we ran into that. So you can see that this is something that probably needs to be done if you want to test it right away. So yeah, it did it on my other computer too. So hopefully this will work. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and load the dedicated server again. We'll go to Steam, make sure Steam sees it. Yep. All right. Let's minimize that. And we'll load. So usually you'd just be loading this off of Steam under your library. However, I haven't uploaded this latest version, so I'm just using my local compiled version of Trilogy here. Yep, so we'll go ahead and load that here. And we'll load Trilogy on my laptop next to me as well. Let's try this again and just hope that it works. So hit find, wait for the join to light up, and hit join. And there we go. So it actually loaded in because it had the proper map and everything downloaded now. So what I'll go ahead and do is on my laptop, I'll do the same. So I'll hit find. Then I'll hit join. So one thing, it did update, but on the HUD, I actually forgot to delete on the bottom left, like those two little, that blue and purple part. But that's not a big deal. You can just do that yourself in the widget. But yeah, at least it got rid of the flag. We can see that it worked. That it loaded in the customized widget because we're missing the yellow flag states. And so yeah, you can see here. Here's my laptop guy in the level as well. And so what we're trying to do is we just want to test that, like if I kill this yellow guy, that I should be getting a point down on the bottom left. So let's just shoot him a couple times. Let's try to, he's got to actually die. And boom. See on the bottom left, it actually incremented a point. And that's perfect. So that's how team death, my team just got a single point. So let's see what happens when we kill him. We set it to 5. So let's try to kill him 5 times. So we got 2 points. Let's confirm like the other team works as well. Yep, so he got a point, so it's 3-1. So what we're trying to do is just make sure that when we hit our max points that we can set in game mode. So basically what should happen here is once I kill this guy, the game should kind of freeze for 5 seconds, and then it should travel to a new level, and then everything should just get reset, like the points. There we go. So it's 5-1, and we should see a reset, and there you go. And so we're back in, and we're back to 0-0, and everything's been reset. And that's how you make Team Deathmatch custom game mode in Trilogy. So thank you very much, and I'll see you guys in the next video.